All right. Well, my name is Bruce Riley. I'm here with Voters Organized to Educate,
Lucretia Wright.
and we are proud to be here with mayoral candidate, City Council Member Oliver Thomas, otherwise known as OT. We're going to have a little conversation, ask some questions, engage in some issues, and try to see where you're at on some of those issues and share it out with our people and help them become informed voters. So, first of all, I'll just say, tell us a little bit about like why you're running. I think a lot of people know who you are, but just give us a little bit of the spiel.
Well, first of all, I want to thank thank you, Bruce, and Recruitership for this opportunity to talk about not only our platform, but our city and how we move forward. Matt, for me, this effort is really deep-rooted, right? I really don't care about the title of mayor. I really want to be able to build a team and build a table and build a community where everyday people kind of feel like at least it works for them. So in my platform, where it says a city that works for everyone, one of the things that I found when I came back, and everyone's always had the issue with government, but it's almost like only for select people, if you know somebody, if you got a connection somewhere. I've never seen it, that the focus that narrow for fixing stuff, for getting people involved. I don't know whether it's a lack of institutional knowledge or it's like a piece I wrote, when I was on vacation years ago. In one of the pieces I wrote that at some point American citizens were going to need a passport to get to D.C. And that was my evaluation of the system, and I never thought it would be in state houses or town halls. It's like government has moved far away. I want to reverse the social order. It's politics, business, and people are last. I want it to be people, business, and politics as a supporting entity. So I want the city to work.
Yeah. I think we all definitely all agree on that.
Yes.
Lucretia, I'll let you get started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, short-term rental and housing costs. Short-term rental in our neighborhoods are reducing numbers of available apartments, driving up houses costs and pushing families out to Slidell and Jefferson Parish. You said the community must come first. And even building 10,000 affordable homes over the next 8 years to support working families. With so many of short-term rentals being owned as corrupt.
I understand. No, that's all right. Take your time. So what is my plan to deal with?
Yes, what is your plan?
Short-term rental. First of all, this piece is, I have to care about this piece because that's me, that's my family. My family moved around from living with my grandparents, living in a triplex, living in the shelter after Betson, until my father's GI thing, and my mama got a good job with the phone company, one of the first blacks to work to be able to buy a house. So we used to want to live in Desire Project because they had 3 and 4 bedrooms. As a kid growing up, I only knew one room, and that one room was from my parents. So no one appreciates that piece more than me. Short-term rentals, there has to be a balance. There has to be enforcement. You cannot have proliferation. Now, the one thing I do know is the city used to have over 600,000 people, so we got space. Mm-hmm. I was the first person to put out a plan to deal with that. Said, I thought that 10,000 units where people could live in the 8-year period would be doable, because I remember what happened in the late 80s, early 90s, and mid to late 90s, when they had the Holy Ghost effort, the Backertown project, the 7-ward initiative, where the CBDG funds for success seconds. We worked with housing experts to do, hundreds of thousands homes in that effort. Now, we know federal funding is threatened now over the last several decades, but why can't we start to work with those agencies and experts? Many of them have retired, but their brains are still there. Mm-hmm. Let's see whatever CBDG funds that we can start to reprogram it. It is short-term rentals, but it's not only a threat to housing, but it's a threat to our culture and our tradition. Okay? So anything that threatens housing, our culture, and our tradition, especially that dilutes it and waters it down, especially historical neighborhoods, then it's not a good thing for us. Now, the courts are ultimately fighting this out in terms of the rights of certain property owners, but you can't be an absentee property owner. You can't have 3, 4, 5 short-term rentals in a block. And if in a community like Tremaine, Long Island, where I grew up, parts of Upper Nine, where a lot of my family lives, you got to respect the history and the culture of those communities, and it has to be a limit and a cap.
Can I do a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
So I was reading that there's either going to be like a $35 or $40 million bond for affordable housing on the ballot for November. Is that going through?
It's supposed to be a bond issue for a lot of stuff.
Well, one thing I was wondering is I was reading about affordable housing, and of course we now have the Housing Trust Fund, and I was just thinking, like, do we own the affordable housing, or do we give money to companies to create the affordable housing and they own?
Now that's a great question, because that could be 6 one way, half a dozen other if they start having it. We know that whenever there have been government subsidies or government programs that are leveraged for people, we know developers and people with money have historically taken advantage of it, right? And for me, I want a prohibition so that local, especially minority developers and African-American men and women, but that they have an opportunity to be part of those development packages, whether it's the bond issue specifically or even the housing trust fund. I am extremely concerned that developers are uniquely positioned to take advantage of it. It's one of the reasons why I voted against the River District. And so I wound up being the only vote, and I wound up being right because that whole thing is falling apart. Was each unit was supposed to be $600,000, where you were going to use money from the district to go back and create a $600,000 unit.
Yeah. Whereas people are just like, I could build a big old,
I could build several.
Balconies and pools.
I could build several. So, the press didn't want to give me credit for that. But I know the games they play politically, they never even mentioned I was the only vote against it. They gave other people credit for their concern, but they never said Oliver Thomas voted against it and highlighted those reasons. No, Bruce, that's a good piece. Whatever we do, whether it's with a bond issue for housing or this trust fund, we got to be careful that developers don't take advantage of it.
So the next question, kind of in the similar lines around gentrification, right? Something you talk about a lot. In the 20 years after the initial impacts of Katrina, New Orleans lost tens of thousands of Black residents. Many are priced out by the gentrification. And just like you said, your goal is to create growth that uplifts without displacing the residents. And you push to redevelop sites like the old Six Flags and Lincoln Beach and bring grocery stores to undeserved areas. As mayor, what's your plan for economic development in a way that keeps the neighbors in the neighborhoods?
Well, first of all, you always want to protect the homeowners, right? And people first. That's still part of the American dream. But you want to have respect around multi-unit families and complexes. For me, I want to develop an infrastructure for public safety. And I don't think people are talking about it enough, but right now, District E is leading in violent crime reduction. 10 years ago, it was the worst places in America, not anymore. But that's part of what we do, walking in neighborhoods, my after-school program that I started, the mentoring that I do. The chief will tell you I'm the only council member that walks to different neighborhoods with her. I think you want to make sure the infrastructure works. Let's take advantage of the natural topography. We're fighting against water. The East has enough bayous and those little canals where we could beautify them, right, to support the neighborhood. Let's do some TIFs and incremental taxing districts like they do downtown. People, it's easy for downtown to hold on if you work with the state to create special taxing districts. But we shouldn't just be the sliver by the river. The last time there was a TIF, the mayor lady wouldn't sign it. If I'm mayor, no, I'm a sign tax incentive programs, TIFs to support that community. God isn't making any new land. Guess where all the new land is? New Orleans East.
Yeah.
27 subdivisions of the highest African-American earners in the municipal district, 7,000 acres of developable business park, 9.5 miles of waterway, 5 of those 9.5 miles of beachfront access by rail or interstate from Jacksonville to Santa Monica. 2 is the busiest waterways in North America. They feed a 33-state tributary system, the intercoastal and the industrial canal, a standalone airport. That sounds like assets to me. Am I the only one who knows about those assets? But the other piece about that, and you're the first professional interviewer to ask me that question, folk have not mounted to the issue post Katrina. Hope 6, and I'm the only one who's broken it down this way. Hope 6 was working on public housing before Katrina, about the redesign, right? How they have people from different classes living in it. So then Katrina hit. So you're already working on reconfiguring public housing. Now, we're already a city that a third of our people live at or below the poverty level. So public housing and public transit is necessary. After Katrina, this is what happened. There was a major demographic shift. The Big Six, Harborville, Lafitte, Callio, Magnolia, the Melf, and the St. Thomas, their population was dispersed. Mm-hmm. There was only 2 places that could absorb their population because they had major apartment complexes, New Orleans East and Algiers. But what didn't happen? The population was dispersed, but everybody who serviced the population stayed downtown.
Yeah.
So you set your population, especially your service population.
Yeah, the service didn't match
to the edges of the city. So why doesn't all our nonprofits that get millions of dollars to study our shortcomings, why don't they have an annex or a headquarters or a satellite office where their service population is? Mm-hmm. And I've been saying that since I hosted the radio show because it's hiding in plain sight. So you want a disparate population, a disadvantaged population to live on the edges of the city and everybody that services them be 10 miles away.
Yeah. And we got a rough public transit situation too.
Correct. Yeah. You can swim backwards and get down there quicker than a bus.
Well, we're going to turn into public safety as you actually just brought up.
So public safety has been an issue since kings and queens. During your term, crime in New Orleans East hit 10-year low, and arrests across the city has been cut almost in half. Meanwhile, the jail population has nearly doubled, and we consistently hear how understaffed and underfunded both the police staff and sheriff's office are. Yet those 2 departments are the largest portion of the city's budget. NOPD is asking for $129 million to build new police stations, while the city cuts other programs to build what is now over $100 million jail expenses. Even the court clerks is asking for $218 million just for new space to store files.
Well, first of all, our kids in paths, not prisons. And as someone who is I'm familiar with the criminal justice system and the issue of it, we're not going to arrest our way, populate prison to fix our public safety problem. I said last week at a public effort that people ought not get too comfortable with crime being down. Why? Because in history, our city goes up and down. In 1910, Irish and Italian immigrants were slaughtered in itself. We know in the late 50s and 60s, the Gambino family, our share was a lot higher in terms of murder and people being killed. We know 17 years of 300, 400, 412, 400, 280 for 17 years. So anybody being comfortable with crime being down now, knowing that we haven't fixed the other issues or root causes, is living in a false world. But what we can do is, I don't think you need more prisons for minor felonies on people with drug addiction. We need to have holistic services, and we need to put together nonprofits and community groups. And if a person is arrested for a minor felony, you don't house them in jail. You give them the wraparound services that we need. Now, in terms of funding for the sheriff, Man, Bruce, I've come back, right? And I've looked at the budget, and the budget is bloated to $1.8 billion, where we had with 350 some thousand people. We're losing population, but the budget's still bigger. You know, as a student, who watched Dorothy and Jim Singleton and others, we had 500 to 3,000 people with a $500 million budget. We got 50,000 fewer people, and the budget is $1.8 billion. I'm not convinced that without an audit are actually taking an intentional look about how budget is used or service, that we can't do both.
Every time I see some small thing in a budget plan, like for instance, putting up fencing, security fencing, and I see a number like $700,000, and I say like, what? Let me bet somebody that it's going to be some chain link fence, and that I could, if it was my house, I would put up for about like $3,000. But somehow, once we start doing these, these budgets.
But the other thing is, departments have been created and agencies have been created that have ballooned the budget, but not did the service.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it happen in a few areas. So for me, if there's any advantage for me being mayor, it's I've seen what works and what doesn't work. And I have an idea of what we need to do to make it work, because this is what's going to happen if we continue down the path we have right now. The city budget is going to continue to get bigger, and our people are going to continue to get broken.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. And that's been the trend since the Landry administration.
Do you think you would get pushback? I mean, you had mentioned previously about mental health services and addiction services. Yeah, do you think you would get budgetary pushback from the council or anybody else? But if you're trying to say, look, I want to put a few $1 million right here.
Not right now, because it's trending. Now, don't forget, I don't get credit for it, but I started the first public show on mental health 11 years ago, Mentally Speaking, or WBOK. Because when I went through with my life, especially being a former incarcerated, I understood and understanding my community and talking to the late Carl Segura and others, that mental health and trauma had never been dealt with in New Orleans. Yeah. Period. And so Carl, used to come on the show and he said, man, y'all need to do something dedicated to mental health. And like he said, because even the same people in New Orleans we got some trouble. The ones that people think real cool, we've been through some stuff here, right? And nobody deals with us when we're going through the stuff and right after the stuff, so the stuff is still there. I don't think I'll get pushed back because I'm not worrying about dealing with the council, because I'm going to have people with me. Right? I'm not going to advocate by myself. I'm going to advocate with the experts and with people who understand the issue. Yeah, I'm never going to the council by myself. I'm going with the information of the people.
Well, so I'll move on to another question. It's related, speaking of people coming to the council, as we know, this summertime, people came to the council and pushed for an amendment to the charter that gives people more second chances and puts on par discrimination against people with criminal records, similar to like race and gender. It doesn't mean you can't hire a black person or a woman or a person with a record. It means that they better have some reason other than just that factor. What other things, you've been a champion of this.
One of my most proudest moments. I've been a legislator here a few times in my past, and this legislation was extremely important to me.
So what other things, particularly in the mayor's seat versus the council seat, do you think that we could be doing to reduce that kind of discrimination, which, of course, as some people don't understand, only impact the people who are trying?
Well, the good thing that you guys did and Mr. Marshall did, especially when we started working on this, was when you can show people who would naturally oppose or don't understand it, when you can show them economic loss of the hit that society is taking. So it was easy for me to advocate for formerly incarcerated people because I understand that being one. But the economic part of it was an easy sell, right? what, $240 billion in this country just for minor felonies.
New Orleans got a couple $100,000 out of me going to Tulane. At some other city,
That's
might have got if I went to a different law school.
$77 billion for felonies for people who've done their time already. So that part was easy for me. But there's a step, and I had mentioned it to Doris, man, a couple months ago, especially because a lot of my friends, especially post me coming home, are businessmen and women, right, who were very successful. And I'm not going to name their companies because this is public, but they run $1 million companies. They're formerly incarcerated people. Why they can't bid on public contract?
Yeah.
And they're good at what they do. They hire ex-offenders. Mm-hmm. Patrick hires ex-offenders. Ryan hires ex-offenders. So I'm talking about they run $1 million companies. But why they can't bid on public contract? Because then we wouldn't need these other people who don't, who may have a problem with it. So that's the piece as mayor that I'm going to be definitely looking for the charter and the state's help. We get a lot of pushback, man, from the state because a lot of our charter is tied to the state constitution with a lot of areas. But I'm going to want the state because we're cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rachel?
Next question. Youth opportunities. Investing in youth is critical for our city future. In Baltimore, the mayor supported expensive youth programs from neighborhood camps to late night center hours, and saw a drop in violence as results. You said the youth development is personal to you as a mentor and a grandparent, and you plan to launch a youth opportunity task force to expand year-round jobs training and mentorship for our kids.
Yeah, the Youth Opportunity Task Force is very important to me. When I was hosting the Good Morning Show, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, we would do a youth roundtable from economics to politics to education. We bring the kids on. And I don't think people understand kids today. And it's easy to talk about what kids ought to do, but the responsibility of children today are as much economical as it is getting an education, right? And so folk will tell me, you need to be focused on school. You have a mama ain't got no money, and the family doesn't have any money. So it's hard to tell a kid today just focus on school when they're hungry. And in many cases, I know how much you got. I got family members, right? I mean, they're hustling in the evening and going to school because they're trying to make ends meet. So first, we got to give people an understanding or appreciation. Every kid who's out there in the underground is not out there in the underground because they want to be a drug dealer or a street dude or hustler. They are. Several of them are actually trying to make ends meet. So we have to approach them economically, right? And so some people, what about your mom and dad? Okay, well, what about them? Only 32% of black kids are growing up in a household with responsible adult anyway, right?
Yeah, it's so silly when people say, like, where's the parents? It's like, well, if the parents were an option, you don't think that they would be turned to already?
And so the funny part about it, Lucretia, was I started studying it when I came back home when Mitchell Andrew would always highlight this thing, opportunity. And so I started researching, okay, but they don't have no opportunity. So if you've identified opportunity youth, and they kept using that, we have 30,000 opportunity youth in the city. Well, what do? They're looking for opportunity, right? So why not have a youth opportunity task force when these kids, especially the older kids, are leveraged to work with Greater New Orleans Inc., Chamber, the Urban League, the Regional Black Chamber, and interface with these groups, right? Not just for an apprenticeship job, not just for a summer job, but for an opportunity. I know, man, they got kids 16, 17, 18 years old. They're going to work in the evening.
How many people do you envision on like this task force to get rolled out? Where do we end up?
Well, I would like to get together with the charter schools and then the public schools to see which kids ought to serve. I'd like to have representation from the kids like the young man who works for me now, Tyron from the Juvenile Justice Center, young folk who work with organizations like this, First 72, but kids from different walks of life who can actually set up a mission statement on how do you interface with government, how do you interface with employers, and what kind of, and there's something that I've thought about this when I put this piece up with task force. Man, I think the outgrowth from that could be, I would also love to see them come up with a plan as to what kind of jobs should we be focusing on for youth now?
Mm-hmm.
Not just what we want them to do, but what are they interested in?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the possibilities are endless. But also, when you invest in a kid, ultimately you multiplies 10, some people say 12 times.
Mm-hmm.
Just in basic business, it's you want to get 2.5 times on your investment. So when you invest in kids, that's a 11 to 12 times multiplier.
I think a lot of the issue is around disconnect and people not necessarily feeling connected with the city and the community. And so, for instance, you have a lot of people, and maybe in a good way, they're so focused on their business, and maybe they got 20 apartments that they're renting out. Maybe they got a restaurant that they got to work 90 hours a week to keep going. But then when they see the other, call them opportunity or call them formerly incarcerated or whatever it is, that those of us who kind of fall into that other category, and there's this fear, and then there's a lack of connection piece. And so, for instance, if we had a program maybe that puts people together to have lunch or to play cards or whatever it is to connect these folks that don't get an opportunity to meet each other and get to know each other.
Well, sometimes when the worlds collide, either it's a relationship or a collision.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, the beauty, right? So I'm the mayor. Ain't no throwaway people no more. You can't say who can't sit at the table. You can't say what kid. You know why? Because everybody who's supposed to be somebody got to come see me.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't cherry pick. Because you're sitting down with a formerly incarcerated offender who grew up in the Lower Ninth Ward, who lived in the shelter, who understands the struggles of life, who got holes in his body from living, and he was a good kid. And so I checked that box there. Mm-hmm. The business council can't say nothing. The chamber can't say anything. So you're going to disqualify all these people, and you come into me to help you, and I've been incarcerated?
Yeah. Well, I definitely personally have a little, my hope is that the work that we do gets people aware so that they don't want to discriminate, right? They see the value in maybe bringing on that kid who maybe is a little bit rougher around the edge and saying like, wow, if I can get this kid to be my assistant manager, that's going to save a whole lot of grief in the community.
But to come see me, they got to see you. I got two work for me now. I had one working for me in the past. I had political people who said to me, "Why you had a kid with the gold teeth who was arrested for drugs working for you?" Well, now he don't have gold teeth, and he got two Benzes in a Cadillac SUV that runs a $1 million company. So the easiest way to check that box is when the people you need help from.
Mm-hmm.
In my administration, I want to have formerly incarcerated people in positions where folk can say the only reason why you got help was somebody who changed their life.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch it to something we brought up a little bit earlier, talking about the climate, talking about the environment. As we all know, we've probably got the most unique environmental situation and dangerousness, outside of maybe a Caribbean island, okay, and this parts. And so, it always hits the vulnerable communities the hardest. They got the less ability to get out the way or repair the problems. So, you've expressed support for a publicly funded Green Corps to create jobs addressing the climate and infrastructure needs. What would the Oliver Thomas environmental justice agenda look like?
First of all, it's a real thing right now, especially with climate change in the way saltwater intrusion, which potentially happening with the river. we tend to think we're okay because we live and we're used to water, right? But water is not, it's a finite source. And I'm going to get a little granular on it. On the planet, we got 1,386,000,000 cubic kilometers of water.
Google that, fact check that one number.
Fact check it.
Sec.
You got 13,800 cubic kilometers caught up in the air and icebergs. On the Earth, we got 2.5% fresh water. We only access 0.5% of it, period. And what's happening with it, we're in jeopardy, especially if we don't get our hands on climate change. Now, I was the person they picked with the National League of Cities to be on the panel and talk about the future of water and how we survive. So with all the mayors and all them great experts, they asked me because I'm interested in this is what I do. We need to stop fighting against our natural topography and our natural habitat. When you study the history of what used to be, if we had followed the Amsterdam model, what they do in parts of Europe, even some places in Africa that seem primitive, but they live with how they work with water in China, we wouldn't have cemented up everything. We would have natural flowing water, because one of the things they don't understand is we keep fighting to keep water out, but we're doing as much damage by keeping the water out because we don't have a natural water table, so shit's sinking.
And we chop down trees a lot.
And we chop down trees a lot. Other than, I will say this, there are two things that I think are the civil rights fight of our time, is economic equity and parity for disenfranchised communities, especially you can't have your largest demographic black folk here and continue to be as poor. You can't have single black women earning 49 cents on the dollar for every dollar white man makes, and be safe and wholesome. But how we deal with our climate, living with it instead of fighting with it, is going to determine whether the river runs through us and over us at some point, or whether the salt water backs up and destroys the little safety right now. Peace.
We hear constant frustrations about crumbling roads, potholes, and construction projects that drags on forever, with cones for miles and yet not a worker in sight. You propose ideas like a 90-day pothole fix guarantee program and a dig once policy to coordinate streets repair across agencies. As mayor in a city where so many people complain about doing business with the city, and we couldn't even find someone to bid on replacing streetlights, how do we hold contractor accountable to finish the job before getting another contract?
A couple of things happened that I noticed when I came back and got involved in government again. And I think the lack of institutional knowledge and the right people, right, especially when you talk about monitoring projects. I wouldn't want someone who doesn't understand reentry working on reentry public policy. We have people in government in critical positions. Institutional knowledge about we got the plumber running the carpentry department, and the carpenter running the electrical department, and the electrician over painting, because they're political appointees and they're friends. We have to have people who are infrastructure experts, right? My preference is to get local people. I find the best people who can mentor people. But two critical things happened there. And I've talked about this on the Good Morning Show about 7 years ago when I started studying it. The Landry administration had the $1.2 billion of federal funds for infrastructure, and they couldn't figure out how to program it or manage it. So they programmed about 0.6 or 7%. I don't know if they were playing politics with it or not, but they didn't put enough of it on the street, partner with people who do apprenticeship programs break down projects and get enough of them going. So you just sit on it. So the Cantrell administration came in and they programmed more of it than we had capacity to do. Correct?
Yeah.
So, all right, so when you think about the city of New Orleans, especially from a business point of view, especially since we've lost a lot of our craftsmen, right, and blue collar workers, right. The Cantrell administration and the Genius program, I think something like 17 to 20% when we had a 3% capacity. So what happened was contractors, like one in particular, had $45 million worth of street work. And
A lot of people, a lot of trucks, a lot of tools.
But think about this: all those 45 million went on one street. Right. So once you start going on this street, then you stop so you get paid to this street. Then you do what? You go run to the next one, and then you go run to the next one. So what somebody stupid like me would have done, I would have developed a list of partnerships from people locally in the region, partnered with some companies who could partner with our local folk to have a go-to list of how much work we could do, what we had the capacity to do in terms of the money that was still left, and break down the project, do what they did in the late 80s. And I didn't get back home until 86. But in the late 80s, when they broke down some projects so that smaller contractors could do more of the work.
Yeah.
So you got left with a whole bunch of streets that if we had had the capacity, it would have been a 12-month, but it turned into 18 months to a year.
Is there any energy for creating some type of policy which says you can't, and there's probably something reasonable. Anyone who's been kind of a contractor, right? You kind of got to be looking for the next job while you're still doing this job, which is understandable, right? But maybe you have to finish. You can only have maybe one bid in, one contract open, then you got to finish. So there's some kind of, you can only handle so many at a time.
Bingo. That's the solution.
Because how many of us have been like, why are there all these cones and no humans?
That's because they moved to another.
Right. So we get it, right? But I think the responsible thing is you can't have dessert till you clean your room.
So think about it, Bruce. Someone who understands that would know that, right? And remember like I said, I don't know what happened and how do we start to get directors and program managers in some of these departments, but one of the goofiest things was public several years ago during the Landry administration. Remember when they were doing the big drainage project on Napoleon? Mm-hmm. And then they finished the project? And then the headlines in the newspaper said that whoever the contractor was had covered the drains.
Yeah.
Had cemented over the drains.
Yeah.
There was nobody in public works.
Right. Checking on.
Checking.
Right. Yeah. That's what us residents are wondering. Like, who's minding the hen house up here?
And that was during the Landry administration. So I would really love to see the right people, the best people, train people, and deliver. Now, I always, when I meet with people from the business community, well, you want to run government like a business? No, I don't. But there's some principles of business that you can't, right? You can have employee performance plan, and you can have benchmarks. Mm-hmm. Them 9 years I worked for that engineering and design firm, and we did from Harris County mitigation project, the airport and Shreveport, drainage and projects in Mississippi. The one thing I learned in terms of business principles, you got to have deliverables on time. And even though there's a city civil service, there's nothing wrong with having employee performance plan. There's nothing wrong with having benchmarks. And I've been doing my own independent survey. I met with 2 departments that said they didn't have a staff meeting in 2 years. That ain't gonna happen if I'm there. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so let's switch up a little bit. Talk about, state versus local control. Mm-hmm. And, in recent years, state officials tried to intervene in our local governance here, from policing to courts to schools. And some out-of-town power players have been talking about a state takeover. You committed to defending our home rule charter and resisting state overreach. how you'll stand up for New Orleans autonomy if the governor or president makes threats of withholding funds, even though a lot of the funds come from here, and then they're going to withhold our own funds whenever they're displeased with our policy decisions.
We on the charter. I'm a fight for New Orleans. One of the greatest fights in the history, especially of a city, happened between Maynard Jackson and the federal government on the airport. And he had to take it to a whole other level. He said if the federal government tries to interfere in what we do with our airport, we will use our police force to defend our right to protect that land. Now, we don't want to get to that point, but we can't continue to be a pass-through. So I was part of being kicked out of the governor's mansion years ago over fair shares, casino support services. We paid, or we prepped that area where Caesars is, with about $22 million a year, and the governor told us take $3.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
But that's some bullshit. Well, they get $100 million off the top, right? Just because it's there. But you also have to have a mayor who understands the home insurance, understands the rights of the state, and is willing to fight them from a policy and an intellectual position. It can't be in an emotional discussion. And you got to have our New Orleans delegation on the same page and ready, because look, this is what I used to tell a lot of the local delegation. They have this saying where they do less harm. Well, the word is still harm. If a bill watered it down because it still does harm. Lay in the gap for when the Republicans start fighting each other, when they need that block for a particular group that one or two or three of them may want, and then use that leverage for what we want. Period. That's how you play the legislative games. But I don't know, and that's how they used to play it. That's how Rev played it. Whether he liked Sherman Copeland or not, he was good at it. He had a relationship with Pepe Bruno, and he would lay in the gap and say, well, look, I'm going to bring all of us along on this piece you want, but for this piece, when they were trying to take over Audubon Park, when this stuff ain't new, they tried to take the pump station from us. You know why? Because they pay us $1 million a year. They wanted to flip it. So we pay them. And so I don't understand what has happened politically, where some of the institutional knowledge, the savvy, the gamesmanship is gone, because we got a bunch of people elected to our delegation. I want them to be locked and loaded for when we really need them.
Yeah, sometimes it seems that, and this goes like nationally too, I see a lot of pressure being placed where people are so dependent upon that one piece of federal money or state money. They're going to be like, well, I'm not going to jeopardize that $1 million program by standing up and having this bitter, vindictive chief executive say, I'm going to pull it from you.
Yeah, but Bruce, I'm going to be candid with you, man. I'm at a point in my life where, God didn't give me another chance. Really not. No, man, you can't have them with 1 foot with us and 1 foot with what you want with your self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Wilson would have been in the runoff if we hadn't had Democratic politicians publicly saying they endorsed Sean, but they were on the other side helping Jeff Landry.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And some of them running for office. So at what point are they all in with us, especially on those critical things where we need them? We got 32.7% of this population is African American. We still have a bunch of registered Democrats. If there was a coalition from Bossier City to Lake Providence to Calcasieu to Empire, especially around the stuff that we wanted, we got enough people here to pull it off, especially if we would stick together. No, we can't. I had a couple of Democratic officials bring Republicans to me, asking me to meet with them. You're going to say right off.
And
I'm like,
it was a pretty suspicious or weird, strange election. I think anyone who was on the ground would agree. you know, where you were hearing not a lot of certain things and maybe too much of other things. So yeah, as a group that fights really hard around election time for whether it be this or that, one candidate or another, you know, that governor's election seemed like there was a heck of a lot more backroom dealings than anything I could have.
You can't be Democrat when publicly it looks like you fight for us, and then Republican when you cutting your own deal. And that is man. Look, some of the stuff that we dealt with, they'd have had to drag Avery Alexander down the steps again. Diana Bearswell would have been fighting. Some of the old time legislators, it would have, because it was more egregious than the stuff that they dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
So, at what point did we get to the point where we compromise our stuff so that we can kind of work with you on your stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we got one more question before we're going to close it out. So I'll hand it over to my esteemed colleague.
Immigration. New Orleans has a proud history as a welcome city for immigration that goes back hundreds of years, with federal crackdowns causing fear in immigration communities. You promise to uphold our policies and keep New Orleans a safe, accessible place for all residents. And yet the governor is trying to outlaw supporting immigration, which in direct conflict.
Well, first of all, just like I'm a supporter of Fight for Our Home Rule Charter, it's crazy because, you know, how do you use state or federal authorities to upset a work site, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's you're defeating your purpose. I mean, you know, I just look stupid. I'm not really stupid. That doesn't make any sense. Look, Jeff Landry and many of our Republicans and their allegiance to Trump, they don't even understand they're hurting themselves, right? And so, first of all, the hypocrisy of Jeff Landry is he would be in trouble for that temporary service where they use illegal immigrants with the guy who was working for him and his brother who got in a wreck who killed those.
Yeah.
So
he also claims to be a big follower of the Bible. I mean, there was words in there about the immigrant.
Yeah, well, do unto others because I'm going to do it to you. That's what he believes. Look, the good thing about having me as mayor is that I know all their stories. They can't play that with me. They can't lie to me. And in the past, I didn't probably help them a few times too. So, you know, sometimes your worst nightmare is somebody who know you.
Yeah.
So but the beauty of that piece is that, you know, hey man, look, you can't stop progress, right? Can't stop progress. You're stopping progress right now. We're trying to finish building this building, fixing the site, paving this road, and leave our people alone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if you want to help us, no.
And it's sad that, you know, around the country, so many of those raids and arrests and detentions, they're coming at, like you said, job sites, schools, homes. I don't see them coming like in the streets with like drug dealers or car thieves or whatever. They're actually coming from just like regular family members that are working and living in the community.
Bruce, I used to not be a conspiracy theorist, but I went through stuff in my life, right? Because I thought OJ did it, right? But I do know that people who conspire, right? There are people who plan, there are people who engineer and re-engineer. And I actually think everybody's missing it when you talk about the cities, to me. And the one thing about my time sitting down was it was an in-depth study, a discerning spirit, and looking deeper than most people. Cities are in play, not because of politics. They want our cities because of economics. Everybody keeps thinking this about politics. They know if they have the right people in office that they can control, if they have the right complexion in office that's aligned with their agenda, and there's secret groups that publicly be but I'm with a whole nother sect, right? And so where is all the work going to be the next 20 years for old infrastructure, old sewer systems, old buildings? It's going to be in the cities. And who controls the mayor's office and who controls the politics of the cities are going to control who does all of that work. Period.
Yeah.
So while we're being sidetracked by the politics of it, and the one thing about the people who want to control the world, they played a long game. They started planting these seeds 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And I always said the Democrats, when they figured out how to win the national election without the South, they mucked us. They left us to our own to try to fight for us. And so now all this is, the chickens are coming home to roost now.
Yeah.
And so there has to be, we have to devise our own plan, develop our own coalitions, and get these folk to realize economically, sometimes you got to shut the economics down. Because they understand that.
Yeah. People that feel in the wallet.
Yeah, but look, if I'm trying to continue to rule most of America and the world's resources, those old broken water systems, that comes your contract to fix them. All those old infrastructure and roadways that's falling apart, those old grids for electricity and gas. They've been waiting 40 years for that.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to talk for hours about the future of our politics and our culture and our grandchildren. But we're gonna shut this down. But I want to give you a chance. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is really important for people to know at this point in time? And maybe how can people support you if they want to do that?
Man, for me, this is a movement. For me, I think everybody matters. God didn't make any throwaway people. Definitely no throwaway children. On this quest, and I knew I was running for mayor 8 months ago, but I wanted to spend my time listening to the people, and all politicians have political platforms. I wrote a 14-point platform in 30 minutes that got over 1 million reads, but it's really not about that. It's about, we're caught in this turn in history right now. That's really about who's going to lead us, it's who's going to work with us, who understands it. People kept asking me if they're going to have a seat at the table. No, the New Orleans, they're going to build a table. If you build a table, you got a seat at the table. And so for me, the only thing that works, and I said it earlier, God didn't give me another chance not to try to do it right and do it better, period, for me. And, for this organization, it would be an honor to have you supporting the people associated here. And it would be an honor to help me intellectually and socially and from a policy point. How do we build that table? I'm pretty smart, but I don't know everything. And I think the New Orleans has to have ideas and policies and a work ethic from people who have not been part of it before. And that's what I want to be the mayor of. That's why I want to need your help.
All right. Albert Thomas, known as OT for mayor. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Yes, sir.
Right. Good job.
Thank you.